All right, and we are back with April Prayer's legal show. And we have a special treat for everybody today because we are actually also live on Facebook right now. Hey, April, how you doing, girl?
Good, 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 good. It's good to be on camera.
Yes,
So I'm
you.
gonna ask my special guest to come on camera too, so that we can see his face.
All right, there you go. Okay, well, welcome to the show, Mr. Clemmons. I am honored to have you here. And I am going to turn over the show to no, to attorney, because I'm always so proud to call you that, to attorney April Prayer. Go ahead.
All right. So welcome, welcome, welcome back to listeners who've heard me before. And if you've never heard me or seen me before, my name is April Prayer. I am a criminal defense attorney in Chicago, and I have been for 22 years. And so this show, not only do we talk about legal issues, we generally do it from a defense bent, because I think that most of the commentators you see on the news and most of the just the lawyers you would have interaction with are former prosecutors, and I am not. I have been a defense attorney the entire time. I started off as a public defender, and I've been in private practice for the vast majority of my practice. I also teach. I also do a lot of different things, but I want to kick off the show with what I always forget, which is my show needs a name. So I'm going to run a contest. And so the contest winner is going to get a bunch of goodies, and I'll rattle those off to you in a minute. But I need a show name. So like I said, we talk about legal issues. We talk about legal issues in the news. And occasionally I actually teach legal principles because I'm really good at breaking down the law in terms that even a fifth grader can understand. And so that's the way we're all empowered, because I believe that the way the legal system continues to cripple us is by keeping us at an arm's length, using fancy Latin terms that we don't understand, and then we're left in the dark trying to figure out what happened to us on our own legal matters. So with that in mind, I am launching this contest, and if you win, you get a $100 gift card. You also get 2 copies of my board game, which I meant to have over here so I can hold up. But the board game is called Trials and Triumph, and it teaches you how to survive a police encounter, but it's done in a fun and interactive way. You will get membership to Lawyer Up Academy, which is a 3-part pre-recorded series for teens so that they can supplement what they learn in the game. And you will also get a copy of the game guide, which explains anything in the game that might pop up, might be a definition you don't understand, might be one of the cards you didn't understand the legal principles. So you get all of that if you win. And the way you're going to submit your name, the name for the show, is you're simply going to shoot me an email. So my email is info@aprilprayer.com, and prayer is Preyar. April is like the month, not fancy with 2 Y's and 2 L's and an E and 3 I's, just like the month. Aprilpreyar. So it's info@aprilprayer.com. So I just wanted to get that out there because, like I was telling Xavier yesterday, I always forget. So if you submit those over the next month, then we will have a winner to announce on the next occasion that we meet, which will be exactly a month from today, which happens to be March the 4th. But I'll remind you of that too.
Do I
So the
get
other thing
do
I
I
want
get
to,
to submit a name?
sure,
Oh, I
you
do.
can submit a name.
Woo!
Everybody can submit a name. Everybody in earshot can submit a name. And then the other thing is, the other major announcement is I'm launching a new website. So I have my website, justicejunkie.store, where I sell the game that I just told you about, where I sell Lawyer Up Academy. But I am shifting gears to more speaking engagements and also getting my street law program into more schools and nonprofits. I currently teach at Aclavis, at UIC's campus, and I do that twice a week. My street law students will be listening to this. That is part of the reason I wanted to go on camera. And so we'll be sharing this with them. But the street law course that I'm doing with them, I'm starting to do for schools and in other settings. I speak at colleges. And so I need a website that reflects that. So that will probably be up and running by the next time we meet again. So look out for that. And that's just going to be aprilprayer.com. Don't go there today, because it won't take it won't take you to any pretty pictures or videos. So wait, and I will make the big announcement. So with that, I am so excited to have this special guest on, especially for Black History Month, because what I find is that there are certain cases that are known nationwide and others that are just as important, if not more important, that most people don't even know about. So if I say the term Central Park Five, just about pretty much anybody in the nation who, at least is at 40 and up, would know Black, white, Asian. They would at least be familiar with it, or the Central Park jogger case, they'd be familiar with that. But whereas if I tell them that this same type of police abuse upon juveniles has happened in every state in the United States and continues to happen on some level, they would be pretty surprised. And if I told them that there are other cases, which I believe the police officers' actions were even more egregious than in that case, probably in their own state, they would be pretty shocked. And Chicago, where I live and where my guest lives, happens to be the false confession capital of the United States. I also believe we are the police torture capital of the United States, but Mr. Clemmons can correct me on that if I am wrong. So I think it's very important to bring attention to the dirty deeds that the Chicago police have done, not recently, just since the defund police movement has kicked off, but since its inception. And the particular set of facts that we're going to talk about revolve around a Detective Burge. So if you have not looked up Detective John Burge, go to Wikipedia, and the first two words that pop up are police torture, police abuse. That's his legacy. And what he did was from 1972 to 1991 is snatch up little brown boys from the city of Chicago, and he would find unsolved murders and pin them on them. But before he pinned them on them, he would torture them. He tortured them, putting plastic bags over their heads and trying to suffocate them. Wow. He tortured them by putting shotguns in their mouths and saying that he would kill them if they didn't confess. He tortured them by hooking up wires to an outlet in the wall and electrocuting their testicles. Apparently, he had learned several torture techniques while he was away in the war. I can't remember which war it was. But with that being the case, I said he snatched up 118 known victims. And many of these young men were teenagers at the time, and they often, and a lot of them ended up doing 30-year sentences. Some are still incarcerated. And this is where I introduced Mr. Clemmons, because he was one of those victims, now survivors, who has turned his entire experience on his head. And he came out guns blazing when he got released. I actually met him right when he got released from prison, and I'm gonna let him tell his story. And he turned all of that trauma into activism. And when I tell you Mark is everywhere, Mark is everywhere. The last time we saw each other in person was at the Jussie Smollett trial. We were the two civilians who were there every day, at least the first 3 days, and we sat together. And he does this. He goes to high profile cases. He goes to lesser known cases to watch the court proceedings. He's at every protest. He does all kinds of things all up and down the state. And with that, I want to bring Mark Clemmons onto the mic.
Unmute your mic.
Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, unmute your mic.
Now we got it. Okay, please.
Go. All right.
Welcome
to the show.
I was originally on another device, and then it clinked off, and then I said, man, and I yanked and I grabbed my phone, which I don't generally do them on. But however, it's an honor, it's a privilege to be on this program format. And, as you spoke about what Mr. John Burge did to so many people, it is true that, the Burge torture scandals, it never took root upon the national scene. And a lot of that has to deal with racism. And a lot of people fail to realize that the narratives of what you see on that TV set is controlled by advertisements and by your racial color. I want to just start off by just properly introducing myself. My name is Mark Clemmons. I'm a torture survivor. I'm someone that spent unfortunately 28 years inside of a prison on 4 counts of natural life. But before that, I was taken to a police station, which was Area 3 Violent Crimes on the south side of Chicago. And I was taken there by a well-known individual in the city of Chicago that later become an alderman, and his name was Virgil Jones. Mr. Jones took me to this torture zone. He actually watched me get hit in the face, and he did nothing. And that's my point. That's my resilient drive, and that's my passion to at least bring some type of identity that this occurred to young children being taken and placed inside of interrogation rooms, either being electrically shocked or having their genitals and testicles grabbed and squeezed, called all sorts of degrading racial epithets, and basically railroaded by a criminal justice system that did not care. And to be honest with you, still this day do not care. You know, let's keep it on the 100, as the young people say. These were Black poor people who come from dominantly poor community settings. Most, as including myself, had some minor scrapes with the law. I know as a young kid, I had went into a store and got caught shoplifting, but that was the degree of my criminal record. They took a young kid and they turned me into a murderer. All I had, and you know, it's emotional for me when I say this, all I had was my little old mother. And she fought for me day and night. It was not until, I would say, first of all, I learned to read and write, because most people fail to realize that, at least in my situation, the police department would have done better by leaving me alone. I wouldn't go to school. The streets was the pleasure of my life, so to speak. And it was really on a road of derailment all by itself. Being given 4 counts of natural life, I'll never forget running into a African-American counselor inside of the prison when I first entered. And he had told me that he had read a news article that appeared in the newspaper. And he asked me if I committed the crime, and I told him no. So what he told me was, well, if you're ever going to have an opportunity to get out of prison, you're going to have to go to school. So I did go to school. A lot of things I knew that I did not think that I knew. And a lot of that dealt with the fact of being placed into what is considered as crowded classrooms, and teachers not having the opportunity to work with people like myself who suffered from attention disorders, maybe on a one-on-one. So I lost the interest. I ditched one day of school and I liked it. It became to be habit forming for me. But being turned into a murderer in the state of Illinois, and looking at the fact that the people that died are considered to be undesirable individuals. However, they had life. No one should have done this. Human beings should have at least tried to protect my interests, but they did not. And that's
I'm gonna stop you there, Mark. Mark, I want to stop you there. First of all, who was Virgil Jones to you? Why did he take you to the police station?
Well, Virgil Jones was called to the location of 66 in Perry, where I was at, not living, but I was in that location. I knew nothing about Virgil Jones. I knew nothing about his partner, who was named Mr. Gibson. I knew nothing about these people. They appeared to be cool all the way until we got to Area 3 violent crimes. And then it was like they turned their eye. You know, one of my first missions was to really find out from an African American standpoint, because I knew a lot of people who stated that they knew Virgil and Virgil was cool. Well, I stopped him and I had a long conversation with Virgil as to why would you turn me over to torturous people? I didn't know that these people were torturing African Americans inside of this police station. And especially once you had saw me get hit in my face and you had to intervene to stop the officer from doing it, no mention to your superiors, no mention. I had a uncle, well, he still lives, but he was a high-ranking police official. None of them ever consulted him at all about my situation. But in a nutshell, I never knew anything about Virgil Jones, never had the opportunity of talking one-on-one with Virgil Jones until my release. But I tracked down all the players, including the prosecutors, including one was a judge. I wanted to know what triggered you to go after me as an individual. And all of them, from Dan Lachello to Michael Bauckham to even the judge before he died, William Cousins Jr. I sat down with all of these people because it's very important for us to know our history so that we can educate even younger children, because there are so many other young kids that were put into my same situation and basically held at the police station incommunicado, where that they were told that, well, they could not have access to a juvenile officer. They could not have access to a telephone. And it left them at the mercy of their attackers. You know, growing up, I didn't know nothing about no police tortures occurring in the city of Chicago. I thought that most officers were pretty cool. I knew on the east side of Chicago, some of the police officers were considered to be abusive, and the ones over on 51st and Wentworth was considered to be abusive, but I knew nothing about an Area 2 or Area 3 violent crimes. And to be placed into a situation like that as a young kid with Virgil Jones, having top knowledge that these tortures were occurring, because he told me out of his mouth that he knew that his partners, and this was the talk inside of their police station over on 51st and 61st and Racine. So if you knew all of this, why would you put me into the hands of abusers? Why would you disrespect your African American community by knowing that the police was going to frame me with a crime or do something that was detrimental to my best interest? That's what he did. And the whole criminal justice system as a whole, they rubber stamped it. You know, as a kid, I just sat there. I put trust into the two attorneys who represented me. Thank God one of them was compassionate. And, you know, his wife actually was a juvenile officer at Area 3 violent crimes, who kind of like educated him to the point that, hey, listen here, they torture people all the time inside of the police station up on her floor, which was the 3rd floor at Area 3 Violent Crimes. What I witnessed at the police station were police officers sitting around at their desks, some of them actually drinking alcohol, no one caring. And it just raised a big red flag in my young, naive brain to the point, listen here, these people, they mess my life up. And if I can just help one kid, I can't save the world, but if I can just help one kid, I feel happy. If I can sound the alarm in one case, then I feel good. But the problem, what I have ran into once being released, is that we're in a different society, and that society don't exercise tender love and care anymore. So you have men and women leaving our prison systems, and they're suffering from trauma, and they're coming back to a society where that they can't get jobs, where that in most instances they can't even live with their family members because of housing restrictions, or the Illinois murder registry. It's like parole extending up until 10 years when it's supposed to be 3 years. But you are right, April. You were the first eyes, you and Brandon were the first 2 eyes once I was released upon civilian people that I was able to sit down and to talk to. And going to school and being motivated by people like Angela Davis and Mr. Conworld, I can't think of his last name, but these individuals would stay on me, and I thank God that they did stay on me to pursue education, to at least raise hell behind the prison walls, to the point they don't even want me there. If I was ever to get locked up again, they would probably try to send me to same prison. And that's because I don't know how many people even heard of the case of Paula Cooper, a 15-year-old out of the state of Indiana. Paula started to communicate with me upon me receiving my first job inside of the prison, and it was as a paralegal. Alan Mills would come inside of the prison and he would teach us on Saturdays, basically how to properly file grievances before the prison. And this was a young girl who made a mistake, and the judge would not accept the fact that, well, her spending until she was 21 years in prison would be a acceptable punishment. So he gave her the death penalty. And, you know, and plus she was raped 2 times by guards, and the judge said that she had brought it on herself. So people like Paula inspired me to keep pushing and to keep pushing. And even once I got out and Paula was still in, I would communicate with her and try to get attorneys up to help her the best way that I knew. And she was eventually paroled, but unfortunately, she took her own life. 18 months out, she shot herself in the head on a Sunday early morning up under a tree. And she had a very a very good job. She was working for the Federal Defenders Program in Indiana. And, you know, trauma, man, it has us entangled on all sorts of levels. So my resilience is helping us as a people to try to give back. I'm not proud when I state that I have helped over 320 people to at least get out of prison. Not all of them have been exonerated, but at least I have given something back to my people, and I don't look at it under the reference of when people say, well, get out and do good and give back to the community. No, I look at it as giving back to the people who need it the most. Because when I was hemmed up in the prisons, man, it was hard to get people to even listen to you. And when you mentioned the name John Burge, many of these attorneys did not want to take those cases because they did not know how to present these cases before particular judges that were biased, that were racist, and individuals that were friends of the FOP and had a duty and obligation to protect the bad deeds of John Burge and to uplift John Burge as if John Burge was a hero, despite the fact of John Burge leaving the Vietnam War and being a military officer that was paid, by the way, by the US to create these torture techniques. And he was able to now implement his practice of interrogating suspects within the Chicago Police Department. But there's also a deeper connection with a Richard Zuley, who also went down similar roads as John Burge in the military and came back and implemented what he had been taught right within the police department. There's no accountability within the police department due to the fact that they work under a code of silence, and not only under a code of silence, most elected officials are afraid to at least roar up against the FOP. I would say over the past 5 or 6 years, they have done better at roaring up against the FOP, but it's a lot of people, they ignored them. So I was determined to, at one point, live out what I told the judge, and that was to save me some time in my life, that once I got out of prison or whatever happened in my life, then maybe I can be someone like him. But I won't look with the same lenses as I explained to him at the dinner table. I won't look with the same lenses as he looked. In other words, he looked at a narrow lens. He looked at a lens of bias, where that most people fail to realize about William Cousins is that he had a young sister, and his young sister, she died in an arson fire. So, you know, all of
He
this.
should have recused himself because it was too close to home.
Yes, but one thing that I want to say is, and this is very important, and I hope that there's many different attorneys. I hope you stumble and watch it. When your clients come out of these hellholes, your client, I don't care if you got them out by actual innocence or else they served their so-called sentences, they're suffering from trauma. People fail to realize the abuses that take place behind the prison walls. You know, I often speak of when I first entered prisons, prisons were, no, you didn't want to be there, but I was amazed at how many programs existed inside of the prisons under the Republican Party. Do people realize that under the Jim Thompson's administration, that you could not be released back into society unless the prison gave you a job? Once you was released, it may not have been a desirable job, but it was a start. And they had housing vouchers, which they gave to men and women once they left. Now it's like, it's uncertainty all across the board. And, you know, with the John Burge torture scandals and the Central Park Five, which I know all of them, and, you know, it's a nightmare. It is a nightmare. And for the young kids that are studying in whatever field, I know a lot of people watch these broadcasts and they have ambitions of becoming parole agents, attorneys, or else working within some field of our criminal justice. Look at this old face. I'm one tick off of 60 years old, and I tell people that. You know, I never even thought that I would even see 59 years of age, but I'm one tick away. When I say that they stole my life, they stole 28 years of my life. And when I returned back to this society, I literally didn't know anything. And it wasn't really the Black organizations that were reaching out for me. I was hired by Caucasian organizations. And oh my gosh, it's like re-traumatizing myself because I was dealing with death penalty cases and sitting down and talking to people one day and the next day, they are executed. The fields, we have to change the job markets. We have to change the housing. We have to change what we are willing to get involved into. As April best described, people fail to realize that there are still nearly 100 of these men that are scattered across the state of Illinois, and they're confined behind prison walls. And what somewhat upsets me about Fox is that me and Fox, man, we have had many meetings and many talks. She has great knowledge about the torture scandal. Matter of fact, she has told me things that I did not know. The killing aspect is because it has never reached that national front the way that it needs to reach. Most prosecutors are slow to move in these cases, and guys are just in prison, but it's in prison without any certainty. And with the public defender's office making a decision that they will not represent any petitions that are referred by the Illinois Torture Inquiry Relief Commission, which is known in amongst most Chicagoans as the Turk, that is devastating. So I made sure that I sat down and talked with the public defender because something has to be worked out here. And let me tell you, I've been re-traumatized by the system. The system has, for me, my speaking out or my activism, I've been rearrested, resent through the system. And what
I want to talk about that. That was what, during the pandemic too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I first want you to tell people how old you were when you were arrested, and I want to go back through some of that.
I was 16 years old, June 25th of 1981. And today I'm 59.
And you were the first juvenile in Cook County to receive natural life without the possibility of parole. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. There had
so
been.
I want to talk to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to explain. There had been one previous individual, but he was downstate Illinois, and he had received natural life, and then it was me.
So I want to talk to you. I want to take you all the way back, and I don't want to re-traumatize you, but I want to know how it is, because I know that I'm going to have, my students are 18 and 19, and they will be watching this on Monday. And we've been talking a lot about interrogation and how some things have changed. Like now in Illinois, you supposedly can't lie to a juvenile. That was not the case back. That just went into effect. And how many things haven't changed. And you've touched on so many things, on the collateral consequences of a conviction, about how many people's hands were dirtied, including Mayor Daley, how he was complicit to what was happening in the Burge scandal, how all these people went on to become public officials and got promoted, and meanwhile they left their victims to rot behind bars. So I want to know how it is, what kept you going? So you told us about the one young lady, but what kept you going for 28 years with no end in sight, and how it was people started to actually believe that you were in fact tortured?
Well, what kept me going was, first of all, as I explained, receiving an education. And back then it was the GED, then you go to college. Just receiving that was a boost to my ego. It was something that I felt that I can thrive off of. And man, having the interreactions with people like Judge Pincham, having interreactions, as I've stated, with the Allen Mills and some from over at the People's Law Office, it motivated me. And not only did it motivate me, watching how my situation had turned my little old mother around. She used to use drugs, and as a result of my situation, she changed. And, I would normally hear other conversations out of her mouth, like, well, okay, I'm getting ready to go hit the streets. Now I'm hearing, well, I'm going to church, or, I'm going to this meeting. So I looked at it, if she can change, why can I not change? So it motivated me. I motivated her. She motivated me. And you have to, especially in those type of hellhole situations, you have to accept encouragement and strength any way that you can. But definitely my mom's was my rock throughout this whole ordeal. And that's something that I look at when I see other mothers and they're fighting for their children. Man, it's hard. And the traumas that even they must face to win, to bring their children home. Man, when you come home, 9 out of 10 times, the mother, she's traumatized by the fight that it took. And the child is traumatized due to the fact of what they had to experience to just get out of prison. I never knew that the court system, that the doors were so easily open until I was released. And I was like, well, man, you mean you just turn this corner and you free? I took a break a long time ago. But just watching that and looking at how I was bound, when they would bring me out of the prisons, I would be bound up with all these chains and all of this. It traumatizes you for a long time. And I had to go through what was called several regroups to got out, got married, that didn't work. So now, how does a kid, from a kid's perspective, grow up in a society that is not so willing to guide you, to help you, and things of that nature? It's very difficult. So I try to be that individual for that brother or that sister that is released. Most of them, they call me all the times of the nights, but I understand why. Some of them can't sleep because they're being re-traumatized. And these are the things that are never spoke about. What John Verge did in the city of Chicago, he planted the seed to what we see right now today, believe it or not, because I remember in the 1970s, man, I was proud to be African American. Who was that? Eddie Kendricks, Moving On Up, Black Power. I was proud to be African American. But when I returned back to society, one of the main areas I wanted to see was Roseland. So I went to Roseland and it looked worse than 63rd Street. And I was like, man, what happened? It means that everything decayed, but even as the buildings decayed, the people decayed, and we forgot how to love each other. And forgetting how to love each other, it makes issues, what we're going through, it enlarges them and it magnifies them. It gives certain punitive judges the strength that they need to attack. And that's what we have to change and start to at least go back to the old foundation of loving thy brother and thy sister, no strings attached. This is a society that has so many strings attached, and people fail to realize that. I love the young children. I talk to the young children. I tell them they are the leaders of, of this next world, well, the next generation, but it could be another world in between that, dealing with our presidents. But, you know, they motivate me. They are the ones who give me the energy. And I often explain to people getting out of prison and taking on some of these issues, man, I'm burnt out. And people don't understand what burnout really feel like until they're going through this process. I have been literally, not just in the state of Illinois, but all over this country. And what I find out is that the same conditions that apply here is all over this country. You got some abusive cop in all of these states that is terrorizing Black and brown communities, but there's so silence about this. And being silent, we can never win and being silent. So I love these young kids that are willing to sit in the streets, or willing to hold up the traffic, willing to go and be agitational towards whoever to get their points across, because in reality, that is what we need, because they're not going to open the doors no other way up to us, because they look at us as the undesirable. And that's the sad.
I want to stop you there because I want you to talk about your arrest during the pandemic and how they disappeared you and how protests are what got you out. So police took you to a Black site. There are Black sites, just like there's Guantanamo Bay, where people have no communication with lawyers or family. There are Black sites in the city of Chicago. And Mark found out the hard way. So imagine he was traumatized as a 16-year-old. He was sent away to prison for 28 years. He gets out and he's an activist. Now he gets snatched up by police for some BS warrant they said existed from years ago. And I want you to talk about how it is where you were held and how it is you got out.
Okay. Well, you know, there was a protest. It was at the Cook County Jail. It was like on April the 7th of 2000. The pandemic had just broke out. Matter of fact, I was a fill-in, and they say, man, we need you, we need you. So bam, I appear, I jump out of the car, I get the bullhorn, but I'm doing Facebook Live. And on it, I stated that as a result of the governor leaving people inside of prisons to suffer, because there's no social distancing inside of a prison, then someone needs to whoop his ass, meaning turn him up and whoop his ass, okay? They took this. I literally watched my phone go haywire. I had never, ever in my life got like 83,000 people following Facebook, and it was just loaded. And I'm like, man, okay, people is up with this. So another prominent attorney, Sierra Norris, if I'm not.
Yeah.
Right. And she was on top of this limo doing her little poses because she had just, I guess, got most of her clients out on bond who was hemmed up in the Cook County Jail. So I go past Norris and I say, I didn't know her. So I said, well, man, are they letting R. Kelly out today? Because I lived away from the jail. And I remember how they would sit outside of the jail, get on top of limos and take picture ops and all of this while they're waiting on him to get out. Well, to make a long story short, I go home and my sister, who sometimes can be highly exaggerative, she calls me on the phone and she says, oh, the police got my house and it's all surrounded, you know? And she said, I'm looking through my camera and they keep saying, does Mark Clemmons live here? Do you know Mark Clemmons? So she did open the door and they came in like filibusters and whatnot. They searched the house. They figured I wasn't there and whatnot. So when she told me this, I actually listened to it. I hung the phone up and went to sleep because I was saying, oh man, she going through one of them episodes again. You know, if they was looking for me, it ain't that hard to find. And then I received in the morning a call from my niece who told me the cops did the same thing to her. And then my mate, they actually got her phone number and contacted her at her job. And she had told me, she said, you know, the police is looking for you. And I asked her, for what? You know, in mine, my niece is telling me this and my sister is telling me, now she's telling me this because I definitely didn't tell her this. So I was like, man, what's going on? So she gave me this phone number that they had given her. So I always keep two phones. One is a throwaway. So I called on the throwaway and it was the police. And I talked to the police. They wanted to know where I was. I wouldn't give my location. I said, no, I'm a lawyer up. And whenever I can find an attorney, then I'll contact you and I'll come in, because they wouldn't tell me why they were looking for me. Well, about maybe 10 minutes later, she hears a knock at the door. This is the girlfriend. She hears a knock. I hears it too. I'm like, nope, I'm not answering that door.
Good job.
So we were actually sitting on the couch, me smoking cigarettes, wondering, okay, now what are they going to say I did? Did I do some sleepwalking? Because I never thought that this Facebook Live had actually triggered all of this type of stuff off. Well, they ended up getting a key from her management and they came in. By that time, I had ran from the couch, hid in the shower. They had searched the whole house except the shower. And they was like, oh, one last place. And she was standing, which probably gave it away, standing like right in front of the bathroom and whatnot. And they was like, and she was like, you can't come in here. So that's gonna trigger them off. They came on in and they, to make a long story short, I was in a previous relationship. I didn't want the relationship with this person. And for some reason, our domestics, I do believe that we need to have domestic laws, but I feel that they are applied towards certain people unfairly. Here it is, a person who files 3 domestics. I go in front of the same judge, or the judge dismissed all 3 of them. So I do recall them serving me. Matter of fact, me and my boss had just left court. And I had called her. I said, man, do you believe that the sheriff just served me again? So I actually took the paperwork and I told the judge the same thing I'm telling you. I threw it in the garbage can because I felt that it was wasting my life. And as a result of even telling the judge that I took the papers and threw it in the garbage can, they still threw the case out. However,
okay, I'm gonna fast forward because we're running out of time. I want you to tell us about how you were held in Maywood and how it is you got released.
In Maywood, there were literally no water, no running water inside of the cells. People had been there for much as 7 days. They were not allowed actually telephone calls. But due to the fact that over, I think it was like 2,000 or 3,000 phone calls being made to the sheriff's office, I don't know how they came up with that particular extension. And people just kept calling and they was like, man, please, please use the telephone and tell the people that you're okay. So they had actually did this about 4 or 5 times that night. Matter of fact, so much, I did a Facebook Live from the prison. Yes, that's what I did. I mean, from the jail. Guys were being kept there. They had no running water, as I explained, and just inside of a cell, and basically for weeks, some of those guys, most of the guys were arrested for like gang disturbances in the community. And while the police were out investigating, allegedly, this was the site that they would keep them at, but they couldn't use a telephone. So, you know, I sound the alarm about it, but for whatever reasons, it hasn't taken the flight like it needs to take. I know some attorneys have actually gotten up because they have had other clients get arrested and taken there, and they all agree it is a black site, but it just have not like Home Square. Home Square, it blew up, but this police site, it did not blow up. And just being stuck there, they snuck me out about maybe 2, 3 in the morning, took me over to the county jail. They had the people believing that my court hearing was going to be in Skokie. So all the people had actually got up, went to Skokie, bugged the Skokie people because they did a big protest. And then once they told them, no, he's not here, he's in Cook County, they went to Cook County and did the same thing. However, yes, it is a black site. Yes, it is attention that needs to be drawn to this police station in Maywood. But the whole bottom line of it is that we need people to not just listen, but to be more willing to attend meetings. And you probably say, well, meetings, yes, we do meetings with Chicago Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression, which people formerly know of as CPAC. And we discuss all of these types of issues and try to at least raise the red flag about these issues. But no, going through that site there, really, it traumatized me all over again due to the fact that I'm watching these other human beings and they cannot even receive the proper assistance that they deserve. And in closing, April, one thing I want to say, out of all fairness, whenever this pandemic ends and your school opens up, give me the opportunity, give me a call. I'm gonna come and I'm gonna sit and spend some time with those kids to kind of like Q&A and to talk with them. And I feel that it's very important to do that.
Awesome. I love that. Well, we got 3 more sessions left, so you still have an opportunity to come. But thank you so much. And you touched on so many things.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
Okay. So my question is, what was it like? Because you went in as a 16-year-old and you got out as a grown man, and times changed a lot from 1991 to what you got out in 2019, I believe it was?
2009.
2009. Okay. Things had changed quite a bit. So what was that like? What was that adjustment period like, having, you know, gone in so young and gotten out 28 years later?
Naiveness, to be honest with you, because I didn't have no one to teach me. I came out to a dying mother, so to speak. So it was like I had to learn on my own, and then basically holding other people's coattails until I could build the wings to fly away a little bit on my own. This society today, I didn't recognize it. Some things look the same, but to be honest, the people ain't the same. So with the people not being the same, you can't relate. You think you can relate, but you can't relate, even down to the young kids. So I have 5 grandkids. So imagine me sitting them down and like, man, what's going on here? What's going on? Trying to relearn this society. And it's still scary for me. I'm just being honest. Every time I see a police car, sure, I'm traumatized because I don't know what can happen with the remaining, maybe 2 decades more of my life that I have. And that's the scary part. you suffer so much inside of the prisons, and then when you come back out, you have to deal with all of this. Man, that's a lot of wear and tear on your body. And
your mind.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. This was awesome. And you just educated me so much. I can only imagine how the listeners feel. And a lot of this I already knew, but you also gave me a bunch of material to follow up with in following shows about collateral consequences of conviction, what the transition is like once you get out of prison, and how oppressive the interrogations still are. And that's what I want people to leave with. They still are oppressive. They just use different tactics. And so you thinking your 15-year-old is going to be okay in a room alone with a detective who's been doing this for 35 years, you are fooling yourself. Get him a lawyer. I don't care what you got to do. And fortunately, in Cook County, lawyers are free at the police station if you ask for them. And that was something that was not the case back when Mark got arrested. So thank you so much. This show has been so important, and I'm so glad we were able to do this for Black History Month.
And when is your next show, April?
It is March the 4th. And in the meantime, I'm going to encourage you to follow me. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook. I'm more active on Facebook. And it's all the same. It's JUSTUSJUNKIE. That's my moniker, Justice Junkie. And I spell it differently because there is a saying, there is no justice. There's just us, meaning Black and brown people are often victimized and traumatized by the criminal justice system. And I am on a mission to change that.
All right. That was an excellent show. Thank you so much, Mr. Clemmons, for being a guest on the show. So glad April brought you on. So April, thanks again. And we are going to close out on that note. We just wrapped up a great show with Khalid Scott and attorney April Prayer. So if you want to represent your city as a correspondent on the What's Hot segment on Thursdays to share upcoming events, celebrity gossip, movies to Netflix and chill with, or a good book to curl up with, if you're interested, connect with me at Xavier Fox at xavierfox.com. Be sure and visit my YouTube channel, Xavier Fox Media, and click subscribe so you don't miss any of the shows or podcasts. If you'd like to connect with me on social media, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and LinkedIn as Xavier Fox. That's XAVIA, B as in Victor, IAFOX, Xavier Fox. My book, The Men in My Life and What I've Learned, is available on Amazon in Kindle format and paperback. You can also purchase an autographed copy on my website, xavierfox.com. Be sure and visit the website for information on all upcoming shows and events, as well as merchandise such as t-shirts and coffee mugs. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Tune in again on Monday at 7 a.m. as holistic health practitioner Samir Ali talks about the importance of cell salts, and I interview my special guest, Yvette Muhammad. I can't wait. Until then, stay safe and be prosperous, and I'm out.